All right. It's time to get this thing started. Today's webinar is on upgrade to the 9s in 100 days or less. It'll be presented by me, Sean Scanlon, Barry Burke of DWS, and Jeff Amrine of Oracle Corporation. Our contact information is up on the screen. Again, my name is Sean Scanlon. I'm Executive Vice President here at GSI. Barry Burke's Managing Director over at DWS. And Jeff Amrine's Principal Upgrade Architect at Oracle. This information will be provided to you again after the webinar. So today we're going to be talking about the following. We're going to go over the upgrade workshop, Oracle's upgrade workshop sessions that they're going to be hosting in Denver. Jeff will talk briefly about what that's about. I'll talk about GSI, who we are, what we do. Talk about some project success factors when upgrading to the 9s. Talk about crafting the business case, what's important in selling this thing to management, planning for your upgrade, what are the things that you need to do before you start upgrading, how do you allocate budget, how do you allocate resources, etc. Go through the upgrade itself, what does that look like. Some production tips for after you're actually live in 9.0, and go through a project checklist, some events that you really need to go through, kind of a punch list of tasks that you should sign off on before you move to the next. And we'll talk about the GSI advantage, why you should consider GSI as your partner for the upgrade, summarize all the information, and then go through some questions. Pass it over to Jeff.
Thanks, Sean. Thank you guys for everybody joining. We're excited to announce the upgrade workshops that are going to be not only in Denver but all over the world, but these are going to be a free offering. So if you want to go to the next slide.
Sure.
So the idea behind these is to kind of complement what GSI and other partners are doing. Specifically, GSI will be hosting one of these events in Denver coming up. But the idea is to give you guys the full picture from end to end of what the upgrade process requires, some of the tips and techniques around that, and to get you guys discussing it with people not only from Oracle but from partners as well. So again, this is a no cost. We have a lot of takeaways from this. The wall poster that many of you guys may have already seen, there's kind of a sample behind there. You'll get that as a takeaway as well as a lot of other materials to help you plan your upgrade. Next slide. So the other big announcement we have is that we've created a new website that is public-facing, so this does not require a CSI login. So you can go to upgradejd.com and you can get links to our upgrade value proposition, technical catalog, the IBM ROI generator as well, and then lastly, links to the workshop to register for that class. Again, we do have very few spots left open for the November 17th class. December 15th, which is the GSI-sponsored event, does have space available, and then we also will have events on January 19th and February 16th coming up as well. So look forward to seeing you guys in Denver. Again, that is a free offering. If you guys have any questions, you can email me, myself, or there's contact information up on the upgradejd.com website. At this point, I'll turn it back over to Sean.
All right, thanks a lot, Jeff. So quickly, for those of you that aren't aware of who GSI is, what we do, we're a nationwide organization focused on J.D. Edwards clients and services. So everything that we do is JDE oriented. We do have a database offering that kind of touches on more than J.D. Edwards, but it all kind of started around J.D. Edwards. We've got over 300 years of core J.D. Edwards experience within the organization. All of our consultants have over 10 years of experience in the field. We've had over 21 years relationship with Oracle. Some of our consultants were part of J.D. Edwards back in the World days, and they've eventually come up into the Enterprise One arena. As far as service specialties, we really get into everything, upgrades, assessments, implementations. We've done both local and global implementations. Over 100 upgrades to the 9s, well, 100 upgrades in general. I think about 20-some to the 9's. We do a lot of world to E1 upgrades and stack migration, somewhere in the neighborhood of 40. Do a lot of managed services, remote services, as I mentioned before, database support, of course, field consulting, standard consulting, and remote application services and development, which are a little bit new to us, but it's a new function that people were really looking for, remote application services. J.D. Edwards performance optimization, load balancing, HA, disaster recovery. And then one thing I think that kind of differentiates us from some of the other partners is we're really confident enough to have 100% guarantee on all of our services. So if for any reason you're not satisfied with the quality of our work, we'll either come back and redo it for free or you don't have to pay for it. As far as technologies are concerned, we really work on all of them. Most recently, we've been putting a lot of effort into the RedStack technologies. A lot of the WebSphere and OAS are kind of migrating into the WebLogic area as Oracle kind of shifts everybody over to RedStack, and we've been putting a lot of our focus there. However, we still do have a lot of customers that use WebSphere 7, 7.1, and we do keep up with that technology as well. As far as virtualization, we deal with both VMware and Oracle VM. Probably say that there's still a little bit more of a lean towards VMware at this point in time, but Oracle VM is definitely getting more consideration as time goes on. Business services, we've done a lot with that, and BI Publisher. A little bit back in the XPI and web services days, but we haven't been seeing too much of that as recently. As far as verticals, because we're really technology focused, we kind of get into really every industry. Lately, where we've really been focusing a lot of effort has been in the real estate and property management, oil and gas industry, distribution, manufacturing companies, same as always, and then kind of surprisingly a lot on the wine growers and spirits area. So, if you guys would like to come and see us in person, we'll be at Quest Midwest next week. I'll actually be there doing a presentation on making the leap from World to Enterprise One. It'll be on November 7th at 9 a.m. And we'll be in booth TT07. We have a few partners that we'd like to talk about specifically today. We're going to be adding in some information about AllOut Security and DWS. AllOut obviously works in the security area and can help you get through the upgrade quickly and effectively with security. And DWS has a product that allows you to analyze all of your modifications against what is standard J.D. Edwards, come up with a good estimate of the amount of time that it's going to take to retrofit those modifications, and also let you know which modifications you can get rid of because people aren't using them. So when we're talking about upgrading, there's a lot of success factors that you need to consider. Number one, you really need to develop a business case and an ROI strategy. It can't just be about, you know, support is ending and we have to do it. I mean, I know that that might be a big motivator for some people, but it shouldn't be the only part of your business case. You really need to have strong executive leadership. Most upgrades that I see that don't work out well or don't get a lot of support are the ones that aren't really driven by executive leadership. You need somebody that's really out there kind of championing the upgrade, that's really behind the upgrade, and that can put across a good message to the user base that this is the strategic direction that the company is taking and that it's important for the growth of the business. You need to have dedicated project management. You can't just have somebody do this in a part-time fashion. You really need somebody that the upgrade project is their primary focus during the life of the project. Sometimes that person's going to be internal. Sometimes it's going to be an external project manager. And sometimes they'll be one of each working together. The resources that you allocate to the project really need to be committed. They can't be, you know, testing whenever they feel like it and kind of showing up, you know, when it makes sense with their schedule. It really has to be something that's a big focus for the overall organization, and that those people are dedicated to the overall project. I did get one question out there, just so that I can throw this out there for everybody. If you are having trouble connecting in for whatever reason, and if the phone number that you originally dialed is choppy, there's another number. I believe you'll see it on the screen, but the area code is 213-289-0020, and the access code is 450-810-894. Sorry for that brief interruption. As far as planning the go-live date and planning out your project and the timing of it, you really want to start looking at the go-live date and working your way backward. So if you have a good idea of when you need to go live, you can start deciding when the project needs to get started based upon the amount of time that's going to be required to get through the upgrade. You don't want to have a plan where the go-live date's 4 months from now, but the start date needed to be a month behind you. That's just not going to work out, so it's best to start thinking in that kind of fashion. When doing an upgrade, you want to stay as vanilla as possible. I mean, I know that kind of seems, like it's obvious, but a lot of people go through a lot of modifications, and when they're looking at upgrading, they have a lot of modifications, and they just think they need to bring all those modifications forward. That's where a product like DWS can really come in handy. It can help you analyze what objects are really in use and what you really need to retrofit. You want to start your security planning early. You don't want to just get 3 weeks from go live and start looking at security. Security needs to be a real big feature in the overall upgrade plan, and you need to include security in all of your testing. It doesn't do you any good to get through your testing without security and then throw in security just before you go live, because it's probably not going to be that successful. You want to stop developing before you stop testing. So you want to set it up such that your retrofit, the amount of time required for retrofitting, gets your retrofitting done before you're at least finished with your integrated testing. A lot of times I see the development continue after unit testing, because there's a lot of things that come out of unit testing that may add some additional development requirements, but you definitely want to include those things in the integrated test. You want to utilize experienced third-party consultants. I mean, if you've never been through an upgrade before, it's your first time, especially then, I think you should definitely look at bringing in, an outside consulting firm. GSI is one of them. I think it's really a more complicated task than what you might realize. You want to complete performance and scalability testing before you go live. You want to make sure that you understand exactly how many users you can get on the system and how it's going to perform under the number of users that you expect to have on the system. You want to have a good training plan and delivery model in place. Before you go live, you need to make sure all of your end users understand how to access the system, how to use the system, how things have changed from the previous system. You really need to think about those things in advance of the go-live. Communication is key to success. This really is true. You really want to put a good communication plan in place. You need to emphasize to the overall user community that, this upgrade is important, not just because, it's going to save you some support dollars, but because it's the direction that the company's taking. You've made an investment in J.D. Edwards. You've made an investment in, customizing it to fit your needs. It's really kind of the goal for the company in general to stick with J.D. Edwards and to be a part of J.D. Edwards, and you need to communicate that down to everybody. You want to make sure all of your hardware is sized properly for growth. So it's great if you size it for what you have right now, but a lot of people don't upgrade for 5 years, 6 years, pretty much as long as they can get away with not upgrading in many cases. You want to make certain that you have a 5-6 year plan down the line of how you may grow. And then you want to have strong change management. I've seen it time and time again where, people start their upgrade project and they start making their retrofits and they promote some stuff and they test it and bring it back, and maybe in the next time they re-promote it, they're missing some objects, and when it gets closer to go live, they promote everything to production and stuff's missing. You want to make sure that you have a real good control over that, and you don't want to lose any of the objects as part of your project. Oops. As far as crafting your business case, there's a lot of things to consider. Upgrading can help increase your competitive advantages with the new products and solutions. There's many things in Enterprise 1, 9.0, and World, in the World 9's as well, 9.2, 9.3, which is forthcoming. A lot of new web technologies. The iPad and iOS native support is really big for people that do a lot of sales and need to integrate with their contacts within J.D. Edwards. There's a lot of self-service applications, especially the employee self-service and supplier self-service applications that are really useful, can save a lot on productivity and time within the organization. You really want to look at what's changed between the release that you're on and the newer release. There's a lot of new features and functionality in terms of reporting, in terms of functionality that you should really be aware of before you upgrade. You want to look at security, make sure that it's complying with organizational requirements. Maybe at the time that you put things into place, Sarbanes-Oxley wasn't in existence, and now it is. And even if you're a private company, is it really one of those things that you want to have a wide open security model when, you hear about all these different cases where people are running away with $6 million? I think it's probably worthwhile to look at security and get that structured properly from the beginning. As far as hardware and infrastructure, you want to look at what's coming to end of life. An upgrade is a perfect time to do that. You have a lot of opportunities to move to new systems, to structure things in such a way that you have a highly available system that's redundant and can fail over from one system to another. Hardware is a lot cheaper than it was 10 years ago. It's a good time to start looking at those things. And as I said, reducing maintenance costs, that is an important reason to upgrade. I don't think it should be the only reason, but it definitely is a reason for a lot of companies. So it's something that you want to add into your business case. You also, as I mentioned, want to really look at your modifications, not just from the standpoint of, this go around because it'll save you time if you don't have to retrofit everything, but also future upgrades will take less time and be less costly because you won't be retrofitting those same objects. Another thing to consider in that regard is, applying ESUs and updates becomes much easier if you have less objects that could be impacted by those ESUs and updates. This is also another time where if you're looking at your business processes, especially for those companies that implemented, say XE or ERP8, 8, 10 years ago, it's a good time to start looking at business processes. Determine if the business processes that you originally had in place still match up with the way that your business runs today, if they're really following best practices. It's really a good time to start looking at, invoices. Can I move to electronic invoices versus paper invoices, where you have somebody actually entering things. There's a lot of things to start looking at in regards to business processes at this time. Now, part of that may actually move an upgrade beyond the 100 days, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit when we make our decision point later. But it is the right time to craft the business case. And then the last two kind of go together. We talk about consolidating legacy or outdated systems into J.D. Edwards. If you have some type of homegrown system, or if you have another, off-the-shelf system that maybe you've grown out of, this is the time to really start thinking about moving it into J.D. Edwards, maybe saving on some costs, If nothing else, you're going to be saving on internal support costs because instead of supporting 2 systems, now you're supporting 1. And that kind of gets into the next part too, which is the consolidation of multiple JD Edwards instances. You know, if you've got a XE, World, ERP8, and the 811, you know, that's the time to start really thinking about, is it possible for me to move this onto 1 instance? If nothing else, maybe I can at least, you know, get everybody up to the same release so my internal support organization doesn't have to support so many different releases of JD Edwards. Now, as far as planning for your upgrade, you know, this is kind of a quick shout out to all you A-Team fans out there. I love it when a plan comes together. You know, where do people begin? Where do you really get started when you're trying to plan your upgrade, and what do you need to think about in planning for your upgrade? Oracle has a lot of advisors online. I've got the link to those advisors on the slide, which I can send you if you request it. They go through an evaluate advisor, a plan advisor, a configure advisor, a test, implement, and accept. And within each of those advisors, they go through a variety of topics. They evaluate, you know, learn the value of upgrading, build the business case, other things that I've been talking about, some different things that Oracle talks about, product enhancements, and goes over some of the things that have changed from the old release to the new release. And they have this really great tool out there that allows you to make those comparisons based upon the functions of the software that you're actually using. As far as planning, you know, they talk about how to partner with Oracle. That doesn't just mean how do I get Oracle resources to come in and do my upgrade. It means how do I get Oracle to understand that I'm doing this upgrade? How do I tell Oracle in the first place that this project is about to begin, so that when I get to a milestone, Oracle understands that this is an important date for me, and they'll have resources ready and available to help me out. If you don't tell Oracle that you're doing it, they have no way of knowing. They're not as involved in your milestones as you are. So if you can let people know early and before the project starts, the better. Infrastructure requirements, you'll have all your MTRs, that kind of thing out there. Training, if there's Oracle training that maybe you can take. Your testing and implementation strategy, how do you test? What are some of the things that you should think about when you're testing? Putting together your project plan. You know, if it's the first time that you've ever been through an upgrade, this could be all brand new, and it might be beneficial to you to kind of see what Oracle has to say about it. And then there's a whole bunch of other ones, from testing, implementation, how do I get training material, how do I define my go-live strategy, you know, how do I inevitably perform that upgrade on production data. That's also stuff that we can help you with at GSI. And then your acceptance, you know, what do I do? How do I get users to ultimately accept this system? Remember, all of these advisors should be read before you get to the point where you're at the go live, or before you get to the point when you're trying to get acceptance. This will help you understand how to get the users to accept the system in the first place. What are some of the messages that you need to get across? How do I get management to accept the system? As far as the project team, many project teams look like this or a version of this. You'll oftentimes have an executive sponsor. Maybe that person's, you know, maybe that person is the only person. Maybe there is no overall steering committee. Depends upon the size of your organization. But if there is a steering committee, then that person will usually be part of the steering committee or leading the steering committee. Underneath that, you'll have a project manager, maybe 2 project managers. It's possible that you could have a partner project manager and an internal project manager. And then underneath that, there's a variety of different roles that need to be filled. Sometimes each one of these roles will be a separate person, but oftentimes you'll duplicate between the roles. Like many times you'll see the developer that's doing the retrofitting also be helping out with the testing, or you'll have the person that does the CNC implementation also be the performance tuning person. You know, it can be as big or as small as is required for your individual organization's needs. I'll also send this along to people too if they want it. So as far as planning, right off the bat, there's really two big questions that need an answer. What type of upgrade are you going to do? Are you going to go through the process of re-engineering your business processes and, you know, looking at everything at a detail level, trying to come up with ways to increase productivity? Or am I really looking at more of just a technical / application upgrade, release upgrade, whatever you want to call it, and move from your current release to a 9.0 release? We'll start with the business process re-engineering because all of them inevitably lead to a technical upgrade. That's part and parcel no matter which way you go. But the business process re-engineering has some upfront tasks that you really need to think about. Right off the bat, you really want to start looking at your custom code, your legacy applications, third-party products, everything that is within the system that you're using currently that could possibly be moved into a J.D. Edwards 9.0 or Enterprise 1.9.0 or World 9.2. You want to look for opportunities to eliminate some of your customizations. This is the perfect time to start doing that. You want to go through all your current business processes and really look at how am I doing things today? How can I do things different in the future? Like I mentioned, can I start looking at, you know, some self-service applications so we're not doing, you know, a bunch of paper benefits. Instead, I'm having people go online to do their benefits. Or I'm looking at the possibility of doing electronic invoicing, so I'm not doing paper invoicing. Both of those things are things to think about. You want to define your success criteria. So what are my goals? What am I trying to get out of this thing? How am I going to save money by going through this? You know, if we are looking at doing a self-service application, you know, the benefits to some people will be obvious. If I have 1,000 employees and they can get online and do it instead of sending in 1,000 pieces of paper, well, you know, that could save a lot of time and a lot of effort. You want to make sure that you define your metrics for success. You want to put in place business process improvement workshops, and you want to go through these workshops, understand what is available to me, have a partner that's already been through this help you out, have them analyze your current processes and look for ways that you can improve it. I mean, get somebody that's already gone and taken other customers to the 9's that can help you out. As far as, you know, business process flows and your rationalization, there's a lot of business process flows that have already been developed, you know, that are probably, for the most part, going to be very close to what your business does. Use those as much as possible. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Let your consulting organization help you and help guide you. As far as ERP instance consolidation, this would be the time to start thinking about that, if it was even something that you had as a possibility. You really want to make sure that you have a partner that's been through that before. When you're talking about instance consolidation, there's so many things to think about. There's next numbers, you know, data dictionary items. There's all kinds of different things. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to take, you know, 2 systems and smash them together and now I've got one system. There's a lot of things that you really need to think about in instance consolidation. And all that inevitably leads us to the technical discovery. Oops.
Hi, Sean. It's Barry here.
Hey, Barry. All right, so
I had technical difficulties earlier with the phone, but I'm on the phone now. But I've only got local slides.
Okay.
So I'm just wondering if you can handle the slides, the few slides that I do have, if you could handle them for me.
Absolutely. It's on the Dimension Analyze slide.
Right. It's okay. If you could stay on that re-engineering slide just for now while I do the, while I just do my introduction.
Sure.
Great stuff. So thanks, Sean. My name is Barry Burke, and I'm the CEO at DWS, and we've been a J.D. Edwards Services partner and provider for the past 13 years. And I guess in that 13 years, we've amassed a large amount of experience in upgrading customers' mods to the next higher release of choice. So I guess I've just got a few slides that I'd like to share with you today, just to give you a sense of how Dimension Analyze can help you with your mods challenge. It will be short; it's just a handful of slides, as this really is a webinar in its own right. But hopefully, it'll give you a sense of what you could achieve from Dimension Analyze. So I guess if you can hit the next slide, Sean.
Got it.
So, great, thank you. So what is Dimension Analyze? Really, it's a software-led service that helps customers to audit and scope their Enterprise One upgrades to a level of accuracy that hasn't been seen before. So I guess moving on to the next slide, Sean.
Sure.
With that service, with that software-led service, we analyze every object, every line of code, every spec setting, down to a pixel movement level of detail. Next slide.
Yep.
And our service typically helps customers to reduce their modified footprint by between 30 and 65%. And we do this by uncovering decommissioning opportunities and reducing what we call your raw mods list to what we then call an optimum list of mods using our custom-built tools. And then from there, we estimate every single modified object down to a days, hours, minutes level of detail. That is the man-days effort that it takes to get your mods from your current release to your target release of choice. And this is really, really important and vital information, because of course that helps customers plan out their retrofit effort, because it's very important, obviously, to understand the level of effort required, how many man months is it, how many people do I need, how quickly can I get it done, etc. That's very, very important in putting the overall plan together. So then I guess leading out of the estimate phase, then I guess the next slide, Sean, the last slide, would be that, in fact, we're so confident in our Dimension Analyze estimates that we'll fix price and fix time scale. We're prepared to do that on the uplift of your mods to a target release. And I guess that really is just a quick taster of what Dimension Analyze can do for you. As I said earlier, it's a webinar in its own right, but I will stay on until the end for questions, and I guess I'll just hand back to you, Sean, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Barry. Yeah, and from our perspective, the Dimension Analyze product is really an important overall consideration, especially if your budget is trying to incorporate a fixed bid, fixed price quote for not only the technical portion of the upgrade, meaning the actual application release upgrade, but also the retrofitting portion of the upgrade. It's the only way that you're really going to be able to get a fixed price estimate on the development effort. Everybody else is more or less going to just take a guess on that, and that's the main reason why we really partnered up with Dimension Analyze or DWS and their Dimension Analyze product in the first place. So as far as discovery, that's a real big part of it. A lot of the other stuff that we talked about in the business process reengineering, you're still going to be looking at third-party modifications. You're still going to be looking at any kind of legacy systems or any type of interfaces into your system. All those things are part of the discovery. You want to make sure that you understand everything that's involved with the new release level from a current systems perspective. And then after the discovery process, and after going through, if you decided it, the reengineering process, this is where you get into crafting your business case. You've looked over everything. You have all the information you could possibly gather without really doing a deep dive into the system. And now, you have the dimension analyzed, if you so choose, and you've got a retrofit estimate. You've put all those things together. You've crunched the numbers. You understand what's new in the system. Now this is the time where you actually put the business case together. And this is a good time to leverage some type of partner resources. GSI is great at this. Next part after that, you're really talking about making certain that you have your business processes captured. So what does that mean? That means I have all of my testing scenarios, kind of my flows that say, here's what I do on a day-to-day basis. Some people call those the scripts. That's what you really want to have that before you get started with the overall upgrade, because if you don't, it's just going to be something that's going to be developed after the upgrade starts, and it's going to take your project past the 100 days that you're trying to achieve. A security and compliance audit, it's really a good idea to perform this in advance of the upgrade so that you understand where your holes are, where you need to make changes, so that once you get your new system in place, you're not trying to figure out what the changes are after the fact. You want to have test plans for integration and CRP. You don't want to just go and wing it and hope for the best. You want to make sure that you understand what are the goals. How am I going to test every little functionality that is critical to my business? Make sure you have that plan in place before you get started. Training, analysis, and plan, like I said before, you want to make certain that you have those things in place, that I have a way of getting training out to people. Oracle has their UPK product. There's other products. You can do some type of internal training or web-based training for your own organization. Maybe you already have another method that was developed for other projects. Regardless, you want to make sure that you put this in place and that you have a way of getting that out to people beforehand. And then you want to really look at your systems. You want to do a whole analysis. And that kind of feeds into really the next set of questions, which is, am I going to buy brand new hardware on-premise, or can I use existing or some type of hosted strategy for hardware? If I need to get new hardware, then I have to remember some things. I have to make sure that I order the hardware in advance enough to the project start date that it makes it there, and then I can stage that hardware. I have to make sure that it meets all the minimum technical requirements, probably better than the minimum technical requirements. I need to size it appropriately for the users that I'm going to have on the system. Partners can help. GSI is one of them. You want to make sure that that hardware is installed and configured in a way that meets the MTRs. Some customers start out with their development-based hardware and they add in production hardware later. Some of them do it all at once. It really kind of depends upon what your goals are. And from there, if you've decided to go with a hosted or existing hardware plan, in the event you can use existing hardware, you start out with finalizing your project plan. This is where you really want to make certain that you have all of the times, dates, if I'm going to have consultants on site, when am I going to start my development, how long are my testing cycles going to run, who's going to run them, who are the power users that are involved in each individual area, what are the testing dates, what are the vacation schedules. That's one that people forget a lot. You want to know in advance if this project's going to run. 100 days isn't that long, but because it's not that long, you really need to know people's schedule, and you really need to understand when people are going to be available to you. And you can't just make the expectation that they're just going to be there if they've already submitted for vacations and things of that nature. And you want to make sure that you have support set up with Oracle. Like I said before, Oracle's not going to know that you're doing an upgrade if you don't tell them. So you want to open up an SR. You want to let them know you're getting ready to do this upgrade. You want to give them all of your milestones, your planning dates, all those kinds of things, so that when you when you get close to those milestones, Oracle's prepared with appropriate resources and is there to back you up. And they really will. I mean, it doesn't always sound like it, but if Oracle does know in advance, it's just like anything. If you can plan for something in advance and get people there and and staff people and set the expectation properly, people will usually do a good job of coming through with you, or coming through for you, and Oracle is one of those companies that will. So one of the guys on my team is always saying, "Are you kidding me?" So I have to add that in there, 100 days or less. Are you kidding me? Can you really upgrade in 100 days or less? The answer is yes. If you've gone through all these plannings and you have your stuff set in advance and you know your schedules and you've got your scripts, your hardware size, it's staged, everything is properly prepared, you know people's schedules, you have a training plan, you have a test plan, if those things are true, then your upgrade can definitely be done in 100 days or less. What does that upgrade typically look like? Well, right up front, you're going to do that technical upgrade. You're going to bring over, you're going to first stage up 9.0, kind of base release, 9.02. You're going to make sure that all of the latest tools releases, ESUs, etc., are applied to that system. You're going to go through and make that initial spec merge conversion and bring over the objects from your initial system. And you're going to go through a smoke test. You know, you really want to have kind of an understanding that the system at a base level is functioning before you start allowing a bunch of people in. So, you know, submit some UBEs, try out a few things, get a couple of users in there that, you know, won't have a big fit if it doesn't work right away, to look at the system and kind of review it and sign off that, yeah, I think we can get more people in there. And then the next part of it is really beginning your retrofit of applications. You want to start that out like almost right in the beginning, because you want to have those retrofits completed before you get into your testing, or at least before you get into your integrated testing. Unit testing of those retrofit mods, you want to get into that. You want to unit test kind of in a silo fashion. You know, really look at your individual operation areas. You know, many people divide them up based on business process. So, you know, retrofit, apply that mod back in, let the people test, validate it. If it doesn't validate, go back, correct it, you know, put it back into the testing cycle. Once it's finally validated, you're really going to look at doing the retrofit of integrations at that point. So integrations with other systems, integrations with databases, that type of thing. If you have localizations, this is the time that you really want to start looking at applying those localizations. I would say it's best to kind of hold off until this point, because you really don't want to confuse things by adding in some localization that could potentially cause other issues. Once you've kind of gone through that retrofit process, that's the time to put those localizations in place. Same thing again, you know, test those localizations out. If they don't work right away, go back, correct them. You know, keep doing that until they do validate. At the same time, you're kind of going through the unit test of everything else. Still your modifications, your integrations, sometimes they're the same thing. You want to keep doing that until those validate as well. Throughout the whole entire process, you really have to be cognizant of security. Security doesn't have a perfect time and place to really get started. Where I really started is kind of right near the beginning during the retrofit process. And one of the things that typically takes a long time is implementing security, especially if you're moving from an older release to a newer release. So I'm just going to go real quickly through these things and talk about how we handle security with our partner AllOut. So common practice in many organizations that have these really big roles. Back in the days of XE or ERP8, you only really could have one role per user. So these roles got really nasty. In order to do different tasks, people would often log out, log back in as a different role. Lots of segregations of duties conflicts in place. Many times people didn't even know what segregation of duty conflicts were there. But the best practice is really to look at process-based roles. So not only, dividing it out by a group, but dividing it down to the individual process. Sometimes a role, or what we would consider a role in J.D. Edwards, is built up of smaller process-based roles. It's not possible to do really within J.D. Edwards because you can only have 30 roles per user. And if you really want to get granular, you have to look for another way, and we'll talk about how that is done. You want to use the sign-on using all roles if at all possible. Use your hierarchy. Use methods for assigning, who wins out when there's conflicts. And then no SOD conflicts is the best practice, if at all possible, or at least having mitigating controls. As far as menus, you see this all the time. Task views, everything are very complicated, very deep. A lot of times, if people use like the standard J.D. Edwards menus and tasks, they're going to have folders within folders and all these kinds of different dead ends. What you really want is a task view per role that is only showing the applications that you actually have to have access to. So if I log in as a role or as a star all role, I actually will see all the applications that I should have and not a whole lot of other useless junk. Menu filtering can be used, fine cut, to hide those dead ends. A lot of times this is the case. Security is wide open. We say type 1 and 3, application and action security, wide open. Exclusive row security. Changes that you're doing in security are right in the live table. So if I put in a security change, it's impacting not only my development users, but my production users. Best practice is to have application and action security closed, to move to inclusive row security for ease of setup and for performance considerations. And then having multiple tables for security and having change control in place so I can move security from one area to another. How do I do that? What could possibly bridge the gap? AllOut security is what we recommend here at GSI. In order to do the process-based roles, sign-on security, using star all, combi roles, it allows you to take little mini business processes and build larger roles that you can then assign to users. I can assign smaller process-based roles to an individual user, and you can use the combi roles to kind of craft bigger roles for those users. As far as SOD conflicts, they have the risk reporting and management. The risk reporting tells you right away if you have any SOD conflicts within the system and identifies them. The management stops them from happening, so it'll let you know if you're about to put in place something that has an SOD conflict. In some cases, you can give the end user the option of continuing on and putting in mitigating controls, and then other times you may just want them to stop from being able to do that altogether without getting permission from management. Both of those can be done. As far as the menus and cleaning those up, Project Plus and Super Grids, both of those allow you to see everything pretty much on one screen, move things around, change the menus, change the task views, change the applications that are on those task views very quickly. Also, the Project Plus and Super Grids are really good for doing the security and the deny all grant back. If I have my task views and my roles assigned and they're fine cut properly, I can use the Project Plus to say I want to go 1 layer deep, 2 layers deep, whatever, and it'll take all the security that I have on my task views, assign it back to me, take all the hidden applications, take the application callouts, everything, assign it back to me as a allow, saves me a ton of time, probably captures about 80 to 85% of all the security that you need on a deny all grant back. And then it's just a simple matter of saying, okay, well, I have these extras that I don't need access to in this role, and there's a couple that are missing that I should have access to, and add those back in. Additionally, allows you to use the combi roles to move security from a development kind of staged environment up into the production environment, etc. So Richard Belton's a good contact for AllOut security. I'll provide his contact information after the rest of the webinar. So now I've kind of done my security. I've done my unit testing. I'm moving into integrated testing. This is really where the meat of the upgrade takes place. I'm really talking about doing lots of data conversions. You know, GSI, we recommend a minimum of 5, including the go live conversion. Typically, you have that first data conversion that's almost like a throwaway conversion where you learn a lot of things that you need to fix, data cleanup, errors, issues, maybe a tools release problem, you never know. You get into the second one in order to get people the data for their unit testing, third into the integrated testing, fourth mock go live, 5 go live. In the time that you're doing this data conversions all along, you're going to be going through different testing processes. You're going to go into that integrated test. You know, if I have, sometimes I'll have only one integrated test. Sometimes I'll have 2 integrated tests. At least by the time that you have the second integrated test, you need to involve security in the overall testing process so you know, hey, it worked great when there was no security at all in place, but now that I have security, I can't access certain applications. That's good to know in advance. You want to keep going through those testing processes until you're not having any issues or you're not having at least any critical showstopper issues. Then you really want to get your users involved. You know, you want to get them to go through this whole kind of conference room pilot that takes them from the beginning to the end. You do the full day in the life. Everybody kind of gets involved. You know, they understand how the system works. It's working like it was before. Maybe it's not working like it was before. You know, I'm building my scripts. I'm changing my scripts. All those things need to be put in place before you get to the actual testing process of the upgrade. And during testing, the main things that you're going to be looking at is really your performance and scalability testing. You want to make sure that you're doing not just local testing where you have everybody kind of in the same general vicinity, but you need to bring in those remote users. You know, if you have people in China, people in India, they may not have that great of a connection. You need to know, can they access the system? You know, can they use a web browser? Are they going to have to use some type of terminal connection? Are they going to have to jump to a virtual machine that's local to the system? Just because it's a web client doesn't mean it's a thin client. It just means it runs on a browser. You want to do scalability tests. You want to make sure that you can get the maximum user count that you're going to have concurrently, possibly even greater. You know, maybe you want to find out how many users you really can get on the system. You want to make sure that when you're doing that testing, you include security, again, because it doesn't really matter if it works without security. It needs to work when you go live. As far as kind of like the performance lifecycle testing, you need to make sure that you understand critical business processes, and you need to have those identified. You know, a lot of times I call it like the 80-20 rule. You need to make sure that, you know, at least all of the things that are critical to your organization work. You can rule out some of them later, and you can satisfy some things that maybe don't work perfectly later. But there are certain priorities that cannot be compromised and need to stand up during testing. You need to establish what those things are right off the bat. You need to make sure that you understand your application, database, system design, that you can support it, that you have it set up in such a way that it can stand up and it can meet your SLAs. You need to understand what your performance targets are. How, you know, what's poor performance for one person might be great performance for another person. You need to identify what does that mean when somebody calls you up and says, yeah, it's not performing the way I expect. Well, what do you expect? Let's get those things defined up front. You want to make sure that the business users understand, you know, what are these timelines? What are the targets that I'm trying to shoot for? What are those performance estimates? What do I expect from the system? And then you want to go through and make some tuning adjustments for system performance. Sometimes that's going to be within your application server, enterprise server, maybe some I&I settings. There's a lot of different areas to change. You want to make sure that as you're doing that, you're monitoring and measuring the performance so that as things change, as I make adjustments, I know, did it make it worse? Did it make it better? Did it have no effect? Don't just make a whole ton of changes and then not understand what caused, what were the outcomes of those. So again, comparing those things to historical results, you also want to go back and have kind of a measurement in place that you've done historically, so you can tell if it got better or if it got worse. far as the upgrade's concerned, we like to see a mock go live that's very similar to the actual go live. It goes through all the same steps. You know, you've done, before you even get to that mock go live, you should have your testing complete and signed off by the different business areas. You got to make sure same of the technical testing, so development testing, you know, any type of CNC testing. The load testing matches the anticipated workload. You've gone through that. You understand what you're expecting for the go live and after the go live. At this point, you really want to have all of your end users trained or a plan in place to be training them up relatively soon because you want to make sure that people have their training in place before they actually go live. And you want to make sure that your internal support organization can answer questions and can solve problems once you are live. You want to make sure that after you go live, you have support in place. Sometimes that support is going to be internal. Sometimes that support is going to be external for a period of time. This will go a long ways towards getting the end users to actually accept the system and the management to accept the system. You know, most people will be willing to handle a certain level of issues after a go live as long as they're addressed quickly and efficiently. And then sometime after the go live, if you brought in new hardware, you may be looking at decommissioning old hardware. That's the time to do it. Close the project out and begin phase 2 considerations if you have a phase 2 in mind. So I'll kind of go quickly through these last couple of slides because I know we're running out of time. There's some production tips. You know, once you're in production, don't wait 10 years again before you do anything with the system. You know, stay current as much as possible. Apply those tools releases and updates on a regular basis. You know, put in place a plan that says, you know, every so often we're going to do the tools release. We're going to keep current. We're going to take updates, you know, once a year, that type of thing. And when you do take those updates, since you're going to be applying, you know, a ton of ESUs through the update, you might as well also take all the other additional ESUs at that point in time because you're just going to save yourself some pain in testing later. Use Change Assistant for the performance and memory ESUs. I can't stress this enough because performance enhancements are always coming out for the different applications, and there's memory leaks being plugged on a regular basis. It can really make a big difference for the way the system functions for you. And again, after you're in production, don't just say, okay, well, now we're done with the go live and we reduced our customization. Let's go back and throw a bunch more customizations in the system, because then you're just going to have the same problem again. So don't you know, keep a lockdown and keep a lid on customization throughout your production experience. As far as checklist, you want to make sure that you have the upgrade type selected, technical or re-engineering project. You got the project plan, the budget, the schedule. You have your team determined. You have an executive sponsor for the project. You have the business users have all agreed this is something that you need to do. They're on board with the overall upgrade plan. You have a value proposition. You know why you're doing this. You know what the justification is. You've got your business case in place. You know, you have a project manager assigned. That person is dedicated. If you have a partner, that person is also dedicated. It's best to not just have kind of a part-time project manager on an upgrade project. It really needs a little bit more focus. And then as far as choosing a partner, you want somebody who has a proven track record, who's been through this before, who can get this upgrade done. You want to make sure that data has been cleaned up in advance, purged, archived, whatever. Custom code minimized. Use DWS. Use a tool such as that to get rid of customizations that you're not using. You want to make sure your hardware meets the MTR and that you've sized it for your SLA. You have high availability disaster recovery planning in place. Testing plan, you have your testing plan in place. Performance and scalability testing is included in that plan. A training plan is developed. You know how you're going to get training out to people. You have established regular communication methods, including, you know, weekly emails, newsletters, whatever you think is required. And don't forget to celebrate your success when it's all over. So why choose GSI? You know, there's a million different partners out there. Why do we feel we're the best? Well, number one, we're focused on the existing J.D. Edwards customer base. We perform tons of upgrades every year. We've moved at least 20 people over to 9.x. No project is too small for us. We can lead the whole thing. We can just augment your staff, whatever you prefer. We have the largest dedicated team of CNCs. We have a proven method for technical upgrades. We can help mitigate those risks. We can fix bid solutions for you, for your upgrade. We can do great knowledge transfer. We're also available for ongoing support. If you don't have a support plan in place, we can provide support remotely. We have remote CNC, we have a whole team dedicated remotely. As I mentioned before, we can fix bids, most technical upgrades. We have a lot of references. Almost every one of our upgrades is a referenceable account. And then we have the partner solutions in place, and they're built into our methodology. We already have those accounted for. And lastly, we have that 100% guarantee on all services. So I will answer questions if anybody has any. Feel free to type them in. Yes, you can get a copy of the PowerPoint. That was one question that was asked. Let's see. That's what I want to do. A lot of people are asking for a copy of the presentation, and I will definitely give out a copy of the presentation. Hang on one second. And I think a couple of people wanted to be unmuted, but it's really difficult to unmute people in the overall webinars because it just provides like just tons of feedback. Let's see. I have been muted. Can you please unmute? So as far as the concept of the 100 days upgrade and what are the requirements before 100 days, so there's some requirements. What we really like to see is, and a lot of that's going to be gone over as well within the day-long training classes in Denver, but a lot of behind this 100 days upgrade is really, putting the planning and the strategy in place before the upgrade gets started. So that's a big part of it. So we went through kind of those pre-planning pieces where you come up with your decision point for whether you're going to go through Reengineering or you're going to do the technical upgrade. If you're going to go through that Reengineering process and you're going to bring in a partner, that's probably going to add additional time beyond that 100 days upgrade. But if you're looking at doing the technical upgrade or you get to the point of the technical upgrade, that's where we're really looking at the 100 days upgrade. So we've done the planning. We understand, the estimations on the objects. We understand the effort level. We understand the all the concepts and theories involved around the auditing of the security. We have the business process flows already designed. So any of the things that you can do kind of in advance, hardware, all those types of things have been selected. Once we get into the actual meat of the upgrade, so we start the upgrade. We'll start day one, consultant comes on site, or you do it yourself, the installation. You go through that whole piece. There's probably, 2 to 3 week period to get from the installation to that first run conversion. Some of the things that kind of build up whether or not the upgrade can be done in 100 days. One of the big things is going to be, the size of your data. So if you're 200 gigs or less of production data, typically you can get the conversions done without having to go through a whole lot of extra effort in order to determine, in order to clean up data or to resolve things. You're not going to have to go through an archiving strategy in order to get that data set down. So typically that would be one of the requirements. Another requirement would be on the development piece. if you wanted to get a fixed estimate on the development and really know that you're going to be able to make that target of 100 days, some of the things that you have to do in advance is really either A, understand your retrofits, what they are, what you need to bring forward, how they compare with standard, what you can drop, what you need to retrofit, and staff that up accordingly so that your development effort is completed by the time that you get into that integrated testing. Or the other option is to use a tool like the Dimension Analyze program, which will come back and give you that analysis and tell you the amount of time that's required. And then sometimes in order to make it within that 100 days or less, you're going to need multiple developers. It's possible. You know, it really depends upon the organization. Almost every upgrade can be completed in a short period of time if you have enough resources allocated to it. Not all upgrades. But as long as you're trying to keep it within the confines of the technical upgrade without a lot of business process engineering and re-engineering and moving that type of thing off into a phase 2, you should be able to get things done within 100 days or less. Let's see. Okay, there's a lot of questions, so let me just kind of go through the next one. So technical upgrade, retrofitting, and testing is what we were talking about as the 100 days. More understandable, but still challenging for many shops with required customizations that need to be done. I agree with that. The planning is not included in the 100 days. Well, there's going to be a certain level of a planning that's included in the 100 days. It's not going to get into the detailed analysis of objects. It's not going to get into, business process re-engineering type of planning. But in terms of the minimum technical requirements, defining out your hardware, defining out your infrastructure, that very often will be included in that 100 days or less. I mean, we've done upgrades that have taken, 6-8 months for some organizations, and many that wind up taking less than 100 days. So it really kind of depends. It's going to be on, to some extent, a case-by-case basis, and it's hard to say exactly whether or not you'd be fitting the best scenario for 100 days or less. So what is the driver that gets it done in 100 days? Well, the biggest driver that I see is really a strong executive leadership. Now, if the question is, why would somebody want to get it done in 100 days? My answer, I guess, for that is that it's always better for the organization as a whole if you can get through a project quickly and get on to the next thing. Nobody wants the thing to drag out forever. And 100 days is actually a pretty decent length of time. It's not a forever amount of time. So the idea is to try to structure your upgrade to fit that 100 days so that you have some deadlines in place and you have some goals in mind for when to get this thing started, when to get this thing done, what are the things that I need to do. If the question is, why would anybody want to get it done in 100 days, I think the main reason for that is to just get past this project and get on to the next project, because every single project that you do consumes resources, and in this day and age, with the economy the way it is, most companies don't have a lot of resources to give up during an upgrade project. Let's see. We also plan to implement 2 more modules new, which are not in the current release, and they have more than 100 custom objects. Is the 100 days still a good number or still a good estimate? Well, that all really depends. Number one, you could have 1,000 objects, you could have 10,000 objects, but if you go through an analysis and you compare those up to standard code and it's barely a customization, or if you compare it and you do the research and you run the dimension analyzer that says you haven't ran 99% of these things in 2 years, I'm sure it's not your case, but it's possible, then yeah, you probably could still make it in the 100 days. But if every single one of those customizations is rewrite to J.D. Edwards standard functionality, and you've completely, taken J.D. Edwards and rewritten it in a likeness that's, your old system, which I've seen many people do, try to craft their legacy system into J.D. Edwards through customization, then you're probably not going to make it in the 100 days. So it really just depends. The estimate of the planning phase and man days to actually hit the 100-day upgrade, it all depends on the complexity within your organization. If you're a large company, thousands of users or near 1,000 users, it's going to take a lot of planning, and it may not be possible for you to be included in the 100 days upgrade. Now, if you're an organization that has 100 or less users, I would say that the planning stage usually takes, if you have a, depending upon, and I should kind of circle back, it also depends on what release you're coming from. If you're coming from an 8.12 and you're going to a 9.0, the planning stage is going to be very short. There's not going to be a whole lot to do. There's not going to be a whole lot of, retrofitting that's going to be required. Probably not a whole lot of security changes. Just probably not a whole lot of effort in general. So hitting it from an organization that's maybe on an 8.12 or possibly even an 8.11, that might not be such a big leap. If you're sitting on an XE or ERP8, and you haven't really done any analysis at all, you're just kind of taking the first steps towards things, it probably will take a little bit longer. If you're doing it yourself, it will take longer than if you're doing it with a partner, because a partner will have gone through taking customers from an older release to a newer release and kind of has some of those, I don't know what I would say, like they've gone through the process, they know what to expect, their experience in that area, it's not going to take as long. But if you're just trying to do it yourself and you're trying to do your own planning and your own research, it could take a while. It's hard to really quantify that without knowing more about your system. And I'm not trying to dodge the question. I'm really not. It's just you can't really say what the estimate is unless you know what you're trying to do. What is the best time to do a security change test? If that means when is the best time to start testing security, I would say it would be after the unit testing is done, after you've kind of gone through, validated all of the applications in kind of a siloed approach. Then when you start getting into your integrated testing, maybe not the first round of integrated testing, maybe the second round. If you don't have time for 2 rounds, then I would do it in the first round. But that would be kind of my suggestion for security as far as when to do it. I think that's all the question. If anybody else does have any other questions that they didn't ask during the webinar, definitely feel free to follow up with me. Feel free to follow up with Jeff or Barry, and I'll also pass you Richard's contact information if you have any questions about AllOut. All those things in combination really help to ensure that you're going to make that time frame and you're going to get your upgrade done. I don't know if Barry or if Jeff, if you want to say anything. Feel free.
Sure, Sean. I think there was a question earlier about the 100 days. Why would I want to go to the 100 days?
Yeah.
The one thing I would say there is obviously when these new releases go GA, such as 9.1, etc., what customers like to do is to maximize that GA window.
That's true.
So 5 years of Premier support. So the quicker that you can, go live and get to get to live on 9.1, the quicker you will maximize, the more value you would get from the Premier support window, that 5-year Premier support window, rather than a protracted long upgrade period of 12 to 18 months where you're eating into that Premier support window.
I agree 100%, and that's a good call. Jeff, you had something to say too?
Yeah, it was actually kind of very related to what Barry's talking about, kind of answering that same question, that we find that the most expensive part of an upgrade is carrying a project team for that 12 to 18 months, which is when you can reduce this timeline down to, 100 days, or, what we're looking at is about 5 to 6 months at the max. It really allows you guys to sell the idea to upper-level management. You're not going over, fiscal years. You're not having to re-justify the cost going forward. So that's the biggest plus to trying to keep the focus on this. And I wanted to reiterate that this is not a new idea. The reason why we came up with this 100-day idea is because we had several customers that have done it in this time frame, and we were trying to sell the idea that this is not just a pie-in-the-sky idea, that it has been done by large companies, medium-sized companies, and using the tools that you brought up, DWS and AllOut, along with good partners, is really what makes it a successful endeavor.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Those are all good points, and those aren't even things that I was considering when I was answering the question, so it's always good to get everybody's perspective on that. If anybody else has any other questions, now's the time. Otherwise, I'll be stopping this webinar. I know we ran over, and I appreciate all you guys staying as long as you did. We typically run webinars such as this, every couple of weeks. If you'd like to keep getting invitations to these webinars, I think by default you will get the invitation, so we'd like to see you on future webinars. As I mentioned before, we're going to be in Quest Midwest next week, 7th through the 8th, and then we're going to be sponsoring this event in Denver along with Oracle on December 15th. Just follow up with me if you'd like more information on that. It'll also be on that, is it the JDEupgrade.com, right?
UpgradeJDE.com. We should probably get both of those registered because I think that's going to be confusing. Yeah, UpgradeJDE.com.
Got it. All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Thanks for your attendance. Thanks for your participation. And thanks for all of your questions. If you have any more, feel free to ask them via email, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Barry, for being in attendance on this webinar, and I hope to have you again on future webinars. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.